How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today, Daf Lamed Vav, Daf 36 of Masechta Nazir, friends. Well, Daf 36 is gewaldig. It's like a Gemara. It's about Heter Mitzdarif L'Isser, Achila B'chdei Achilas Pras, Achilas Kazayis B'chdei Achilas Pras. It's a real sugya. It's just hard to learn it Masechta Nazir. So I feel like I don't have my tools. I don't have Rashi. I need ya. Rashi, I'm in Masechta Sota. I'm excited to see you again in Masechta Sota. We've been Masechta Nidarim and Nazir without Rashi. Can you imagine? Rashi is Rashi. I mean, sometimes I wonder, like if there was somebody from our history that I could meet. There's a big. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I haven't thought about all the things, but the first one to cut. Let's just say this: probably the first one that comes to mind, Rashi. I mean, his contribution to my life and the simplicity, the way that he can just take a complicated Gemara, and explain it in a few words. I mean, wow! No other Rishon does it like Rashi. I mean. Yeah, Rashi's in a league of his own. I mean, even before Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive, there was Rashi. If it was a chiddush, how Apple could take an iPhone and have only one button, and then figure out how to get rid of that button. Rashi was doing that back before it was cool. Rashi's all about just simplicity. Maybe that's where Steve Jobs got it from, although that wasn't in the Walter Isaacson book. Let's go weiter. Alright, so where are we? Daf Lamed Hey, Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Amr Babo, Amr B'Yechanon, Kol Isurin Shabbatere, Ein Heter Mitzdarif L'Isser, Chutz Me Isuri Nazir, Shari Amr Teire, Mishras, Givaldig. Let's read that again. Amr Babo says Abo, Amr B'Yochanan, name of B'Yochanan. Kol Isurin Shabbat Torah, all Isers in the Torah, in Heter Mitzdarif L'Isser, the Heter is not Mitzdarif to the Isser, Chutz Me Isuri Nazir, except for Nazir, Shari Amr Torah Mishras, because it says Mishras. Okay, I didn't do such a good job explaining that. Basically, when it comes to Nazir, as we learned in the Mishnah, right? We saw the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that if you take bread and you dip it into wine, so even though there isn't a kazayas of wine, but there's a kazayas of wine-soaked bread, so that would be enough for a nazir to be violating, the eating of grape products. So we see that the bread is combining together with the wine to create a kazayas. So even though you don't have a kazayas of wine, but the bread is sort of serving as a filler for the kazayas. So you don't have a kazayas of wine, but you're eating a kazayas of the mixture of bread and wine. So says Rabbi Bo in the name of Yochanan that in general we don't say heter mitzdarif l'Isser. Kol isun Shabbat Torah ein. I'm reading that again. Ein heter mitzdarif l'Isser. In general, we do not say that heter mitzdarif l'Isser. That just some random bread you'll throw in the mixture with whatever thing is aser. I don't know if you have chaylev and shuman, I guess, and you eat half a kazayis of chaylev and half a kazayis of shuman. The shuman doesn't fill out the chaylev to be considered a kazayis of chaylev. But by Nazir, right, chutz me isuri Nazir, but by Nazir, the bread will fill out the kazayis of wine. Shari amatar mishras, because it says soaking, right, that you shora, you soak, right, it says mishras anavim, even soaking of the grapes, that if you take bread and you soak it in the wine, so that would create a kazayis of Isser. So by Nazir, we do say Heter Mitzdarif L'Isser. Zeiri Amar Af Seor, says Zeiri that this applies as well to Seor, to leaven, that we don't offer chometz on the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash. We don't burn chometz on the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash. Now there are a few exceptions like Korban Toda, Seder, but in general by Mincha, it says that it's not chometz. Now if you have some leaven, some chometz, So the non-chametz could join together with the chametz to create a kazayis of chametz, and that would be a problem. So b'bal taktiru, right, when it says that you shouldn't burn it on the mizbeach, kiman kerbeliezer, now frek the gemara kasha on Ziri. Wait 1 second. Who says that the heter is mitzdaref le'isur by the chametz on the mizbeach? Is it like Rabbi Eliezer the Darish kol? Excuse me, babble sneeze. So is it like Rabbi Eliezer that he darshins kol to learn out right? That he learns from that pasuk that even heter is mitzdaref le'isur over here. Yachi le'inyan chametz navi. Rabbi Eliezer also says with regard to chametz that if you have heter mitzdaref le'isur would apply to chametz as well. So why doesn't Zeiri mention chametz too? Say no chinami, he could have mentioned chametz. But the reason why he focused specifically on burning chametz on the mizbeach is to the exclusion of Abayi's opinion. To Amr Yeshaktar b'palchus mikazayis. That Abayi says that the prohibition against burning a kazai, burning chametz on the mizbeach is even if it's less than a kazayis. And Zeiri is coming to argue on Abayi and to say, no, it has to be a kazayis, but that heter is mitzdaref le'isur legat to get to that kazayis. So Abayi says no, it doesn't even need to be a kazayis. Zeiri says yes, it does need to be a kazayis, but you could have heter mitzdaref le'isur, and that's why Zeiri specifically focuses on burning chametz on the mizbeach as opposed to eating chametz on Pesach, to exclude the opinion of Abayi. Yosef Rav Dimi v'ka omer la lehashmaita. Now, Rav Dimi was sitting and he was saying over this halacha that Rabbi Bo said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that, Babylon, that the only place where heter is mitzdaref le'isur is by Nazir. So Rav Dimi was saying that to Abayi, and he says to Abayi, look, he quotes Rabbi Yochanan, and he says the only place where we say heter is mitzdaref le'isur is by Nazir. Now, again, Yosef Rav Dimi v'kamila le'ashmaita eis ve'Abayi. Now Abayi asks a kasha Rav Dimi. Really, is that so? That the only place where we say heter is mitzdaref le'isur is by Nazir? Hamikba shel trume, What if you have a porridge of trume? Porridge, faceness. I don't make porridge. I don't make anything, as you know. Mamish, I hit a geschmacke. I had a geschmacke situation. My fridge was mamish empty. I finally today, I threw out the egg salad that was in there from when my brother came, I don't even remember when. And then there was also a timtrina, I think, also from when he was here. I finally threw it out today. My fridge was mamish empty. But then my brother came and then now it's not empty anymore. Yosef Rav Dimi v'kamala le'ashmaita. Do you like when I tell you this stuff? Are you interested in knowing about my fridge? Anyways, mikvah, porridge. If you have porridge of truma, and so you have a porridge, and the porridge is truma. V'ashum v'ashem shel chulin. But to spice up the porridge, there is garlic and oil. And the garlic and the oil are not truma; they're chulin. V'noga tvul yom b'miktsasa. Now a tvul yom, what's a tvul yom? Tvul yom is the guy goes to the mikveh, so let's say he's chveis nishtem Torah, I don't know, and then he became pure and he goes to the mikveh that the last day, and then or zav, whatever, goes to the mikveh on the last day when he becomes pure. Then until that night he's what's called a tvul yom. He can't eat truma yet. Anyways, so as a tvul yom, so he has a status of a sheni latuma. A sheni latuma. Now, a sheni latuma is unable to be metame ochlin umashkin, right? If he touches food or liquids, although midrabanan, whatever. But if he touches food, then the food is not tameh. But if he touches trume, the trume becomes pasul. What pasul means is that it can't be metame other trume; it ends there. But that trume will be pasul. So you have this porridge. The porridge is trume. Now there's oil and garlic in there, that's chulin, but the porridge, the ikr, the main situation therein is truma. A tvul yom, who has a status of a sheni l'tuma and can be pasul truma, touches this porridge, which is be'etzim truma. So v'noga tvul yom b'miktzosan, and the tvul yom touches this porridge, pasul eskula, and the entire porridge is now pasul because it was touched by a tvul yom. However, mikvah shel chulin. But if it was fakert, if the porridge was chulin, v'ashum v'ashemen shel truma, and the garlic and the oil was truma, v'noga, right? So most of it was chulin, right? The porridge itself was chulin, but the oil and the garlic that was mixed into it was truma. V'naga tvul yom b'miktzosan, and then the tvul yom touches this porridge. Lo pasal ela makom mago. So then the tvul yom is only making pasul the part right, what he touched. Only the part that he touched is pasul, because the porridge itself is chulin. Just the oil and the garlic that was mixed into it was truma. So if the tvul yom now touches this porridge, only the part that he touched is going to be tameh, is going to be pasul. But we ask, makom on my pasul, how come the part that he touched is pasul? Matam ho v'zar loke aleh b'kizayis. Well, if a non-Kohen were to eat, right? A Kohen, of course, is allowed to eat truma. A non-Kohen is not allowed to eat truma. And if a non-Kohen eats a kizayis of this porridge, that the porridge itself is chulin, but the garlic and the oil that is mixed into the porridge is truma, and a zar, a non-Kohen, eats a kizayis of this mixture, of this porridge, he gets makis. And for that reason, that's why we consider the part that the tvul yom touches to be pasul, because after all, right, even though yes, the porridge itself is chulin, and it's only the oil and the garlic that are truma, but since a zar would get makis if he eats a kazayis of this porridge, so also if a tvul yom touches the porridge, that part would be, the part that he touched would be pasul. My taime. Now here's Abayi's kasha. How come a zar who eats a kazayis of this porridge would be chayiv makis? Lav mishum deheter mitzdarif le'iser. That's Abayi's kasha. How come the zar is chayiv makis for eating a kazayis of this porridge with oil and garlic mixed into it? Is it not, frekt by Asabai, is it not because the porridge, which is chulin, joins together with the oil and the garlic to make a kazayis, and therefore joins together to make a kazayis of this forbidden mixture, and that's why he's chayiv makis? That's Abayi's kasha. So we see that it's not only by Nazir, it's also by this case of the porridge that we're saying heter mitzdarif le'iser. Oh, chevre! Oh, I feel like I'm saying this every day now. Chevre, do you remember what it's like to use your brain like this? You gotta, it's a muscle. You gotta, it hurts, your brain hurts right now a little bit. You haven't been working the muscle as much. Amalei, lo. So Rav Dimi says, nisht. My kizayis, de'ika kizayis bechdei achilas pras. Rav Dimi says, no, the reason why you chayiv makis is not because heter mitzdarif le'iser. The reason why you chayiv makis, why a zar who eats his porridge is chayiv makis, is if he eats a kizayis of the garlic and oil within the amount of time that it takes to eat a pras. A pras is a half of a 8 eggs worth loaf, i.e. bread, 4 eggs worth of bread. So the amount of time that it takes to eat 4 eggs worth of bread. So if a fellow were to eat enough of this porridge so that he would be eating a kazayis of garlic and oil within a kedei achilas pras, then he would be chayiv makas. So it's not because of heter mitzdarif le'iser, says Rav Dimi. it's because he's eating a kezayis of truma bichdei achilas pras. B'achilas pras d'oraisa. But one second, is eating a kezayis bichdei achilas pras midoraisa that we would flog the fellow, that we give him makis? Amlein. Ravdimi says, sure, avad. Of course, it's d'oraisa. Yochi, am I pligi rabbanon oleder b'eliezer b'kutach habavli? Ho ho. Well, if eating a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras is d'oraisa, then how could the rabbis argue with Rabbi Eliezer, who says that when it comes to chometz, if you eat a kazayis, right? So this kutach habavli, it's like this Babylonian dip, and they would thicken up the dip with like some chometz. There was chometz in there, but very little. Rabbi Eliezer says if you eat a kazayis of this kutach habavli, so then you are. You're not allowed to do that. It's also on Pesach. But how could the rabbis argue? Because after all, if achilas kazayis b'chdei achilas pras is the oraise, then how could the rabbis allow you to eat the kutach habavli on Pesach if you might end up eating a kazayis of chometz b'chdei achilas pras? Omlehanach lekutach habavli. Rav Dimi says, don't ask me kashis from kutach habavli deleka kazayis b'chdei achilas pras, because kutach habavli actually does not. You are never, it would be impossible to eat a kezayis of chometz b'chdei achilas pras by consuming kutach habavli, because either kasharif le mishraf but l'daito etzel kol adam, because if he's just, downing, if he's just going to drink out of the bottle, well, then his actions are nullified to the actions of all other people, right? That it's just not the normal way to consume this product. It's normally consumed as a dip. And therefore, if you decide that you're just gonna, chug a bunch of kutach habavli, and then you'll have chometz b'chdei achilas pras, it wouldn't be that. It would not be batla daito etzuk adam. His anomalationness, he's an anomaly, and therefore he wouldn't be chayiv for eating chametz on Pesach if he's an anomaly, an outlier. And if he's eating it the regular way, which would be as a dip, well, eating it as a dip, it would be impossible to have enough chametz when using kutach habavli as a dip. It would be impossible to have, or you wouldn't get to enough chametz b'chdei achilas pras while eating kutach habavli as a dip, and therefore that's why the rabbis didn't have to be concerned about chometz b'chdei achilas pras when it comes to kutach habavli. Eisvei, Abaye asks another kasha on Rav Dimi medochos. If you have two mortars, a mortar, right, a mortar and a pestle, you put some spices in there, you pound the spices, and then you can use the spices. So if you have two mortars, and the contents of one mortar was trume, and the contents of the other mortar was chulin. And before these two mortars were two pots, and one pot had truma in it, and one pot had chulin in it. And the contents of the mortars fell into the two pots, right? One mortar into one pot, the other mortar into the other. Shteyen mutaris. Both pots are mutter. Shani omer, meaning we assume that the truma remains truma and the chulin remains chulin. Shani omer chulin l'soch chulin naflu v'truma l'soch truma nafla. Well, I'll say that the mortar with the truma fell into the pot with the truma, and the mortar with the chulin fell into the pot with the chulin. So a non-kohen can eat the chulin pot because the chulin pot has the chulin spices. However, asks Abaye, but if it enters your mind to say that consuming a kizayis b'chdei achilas pras is the oraise, how can we be so lax? How can we say, it's okay, go ahead, eat the chulin, because we can just assume that the chulin fell into the chulin, not the truma. We can assume the truma did not fall into the chulin. But one second, what if the truma did fall into the chulin? If the truma did fall into the chulin, well then you might be consuming a kezayis of truma b'chdei achilas pras. And if you do that, it asks Abaye, Rav Dimi, if you're saying that it's the oraisa, how can we simply allow him to eat the chulin? Because we'll just say that the chulin fell into the chulin. We can't just say that. If we have to be concerned that, if eating a kazayis of truma b'chdei achilas pras is a problem in mida oraisa, we should have to be concerned that maybe the truma fell into the chulin and that you may end up eating a kazayis of truma b'chdei achilas pras as a non-kohen. Ela my heter mitzaref le'isur, to which Rav Dimi shoots back. He says, 1 second, Abaye, let's take a step back over here. Where did this all come from? This all came from the fact that by the porridge, you were trying to argue heter mitzaref le'isur. I said, no, it's about kedei achilas pras. You're not asking me kashas about kedei achilas pras. But Abaye, your whole argument was to say that we say heter mitzaref le'isur, not just by Nazir, but by all instances. So then, Abaye, if you're a heter mitzaref le'isur guy, well then, how do you understand this brisa? How can we say that? How can we say, according to you, Abaye, that you'd be allowed to eat the chulin? Don't we have to be concerned that the truma fell into the chulin? And if you eat a kazayis of it, then we have to be concerned that heter mitzaref le'isur, and that you'd be eating a kazayis of truma, and it would be a problem. So Amayim minachani omer ela hanach l'truma tavlin derabanan hi. Rather, this has nothing to do with kazayis b'chdei achilas pras. It has nothing to do with heter mitzaref le'isur. Truma of spices is only midrabanan. Midoraisa truma is only by dagon tirish v'yitzar, grain, wine, and grain, grapes, and olives. So therefore, spices is only truma midrabanan, and therefore, if we can say that the chulin fell into the chulin, we don't, there's reason to be lenient over here and to say that you can eat the chulin. Eisvei, Abaye is not deterred. He asks another kasha. Shtei kupis, achas shel truma v'achas shel chulin. If you have 2 boxes, one of them contains truma grain and the other contains chulin grain, for the fnein shtei sa'in, and in front of the 2 boxes are 2 sa'as, which are a smaller measurement. Achas shel chulin v'achas shel truma. One sa'a is of chulin grain, and the other sa'a is of truma grain. V'naflu elu lisoch elu, in the sa'a. And the 2 sa'as fell into the 2 boxes. Shnein mutarin, you can consume the grain of both boxes. Shani omer, because I'll say chulin l'so chulin naflu, that the chulin grain, the chulin sa'a fell into the chulin box. Truma l'so truma nafla, and that the truma sa'a fell into the truma box. V'sagadaytech kazayis v'chdei achilas pras also amayim and shani omer. In fact, Abaye, if in fact eating a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras is a problem, is an issue midoraisa, then how can we allow you to consume the chulin grain? Don't we have to be concerned that the truma grain fell into the chulin grain and that you're going to be eating a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras? Bishlam l'didi de'amina mishum heter mitzaref le'isur. And Abaye continues, according to me, that I don't say that kazayis b'chdei achilas pras is midoraisa. And I do say that we have to be concerned about heter mitzaref le'isur, but heter mitzaref le'isur wouldn't apply in this case, and that's why you can eat the chulin. According to me, says Abaye, I can understand this brisa, because I say that we would say heter mitzaref le'isur, but kagon denefishe chulin. But we're talking about where there's more chulin than there is truma, right? Meaning, if we say that the sa'a of truma grain fell into the box, into the kupa of chulin grain, well, there's going to be more, right? The box is bigger than the sa'a. So we're talking about where there's more chulin grain than there is truma grain. And we would only say heter mitzaref le'isur if there's more truma grain than there is chulin grain. So if there was more truma grain than chulin grain, and you took a kazayis of the grain, we could say that the chulin would be mitzaref with the truma, and we would say that you'd be chai for eating truma. But says Abaye, because it's also another important point is that it's min b'mino, right? It's all the same product, right? As opposed to the spices from earlier, where it was 2 different, it was spices, and there was what was it? Grain, I guess, or whatever. whatever was in the pot, but it was two different, right? It wasn't, right? There was spices and there was whatever was in the pot. Those were two separate, those were two separate things. It was min b'she'eno mino, and therefore we could say that the heter would be mistayef l'isur. But over here, where it's min b'mino, it's all the same product. It's all the same, right? It's all grain. So therefore, we would only say heter is mistayef l'isur if there was more truma than there is chulin. But over here, the box of chulin, there's more chulin in the box than there is the truma and the sa'a, and therefore we would not say heter mitzayef l'isur, and that is why you can eat the chulin. But according to you, Reb Dimi, that you say that that you say that kazayis b'chdei achilas pras is the oraisa, ki nefishe chulin may have. Even if there is more chulin than there is truma, we should still have to be concerned that you can eat a kazayis of truma b'chdei achilas pras, and that's a problem. How come you're allowed to eat the chulin? So Omar lei hanach l'truma b'zman hazeh d'Rabbanan, to which Rav Dimi says, don't ask me kashas from this truma nowadays, because truma nowadays is only midrabanan. Interesting. And therefore, if we could say that the chulin fell into the chulin, so then there's reason to be lenient over here. Friends, that was Daf Lamed Vav of Masechta Nazir. Very interesting stuff. We talked about the sugya of heter mitzayef l'isur. We saw that Rabbi Yochanan says that heter mitzayef l'isur is only by Nazir, and Abaye was asking kashas to try to say that maybe it applies to other places as well. We also saw the halacha of eating a kazayis b'chadei achilas pras. Rav Dimi is making the argument that that is mida oraisa. Alright, Abaye is trying to prove it's only mida rabbanon. Friends, that was Daf Lamed Vav, Masechta Nazir. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.